Welcome in to another Dolphins Mailbag. So glad to have you along. We've got some great questions lined up. Any question, let me know. Nothing is off limits. Use that hashtag Dolphins to get your question answered. And we start out with a good one from Chad Jones using that hashtag Dolphins. Sorry I'm late. Where do you think the Dolphins will shine the most on Sunday? Offense or defense? That's a great question because first way I want to answer that question, you look at the opponent, the Buffalo Bills. What do they do well? Many would say, yeah, obviously their explosive offense with Josh Allen, but the defense has also been really good so far for the Buffalo Bills. In fact, they're 7th in total team defense and 7th in total team offense. So you could make the case that they're really good on both sides of the ball. And the Bills defense got after the Commanders last Sunday, and they sacked Sam Howell 9 times, which is crazy to think about. The combination of the 9 sacks and the 4 interceptions, no defense had done that since the 1985 Cowboys. So the Dolphins will have their hands full, but I think when it's good versus good, as is the case with Dolphins versus Bills, two really good teams, that's where the best wins out. And the Dolphins offense has been better than anybody through 3 games. Tua has been electric. Mike McDaniel and Frank Smith have been wizards, calling masterful games in 3 consecutive weeks. And when you count on the weapons that the Dolphins have in the backfield, Raheem Mostert and DeVon Achane combining for 8 total touchdowns against the Broncos. The 8 total touchdowns by backfield mates, that had only been done one other time in NFL history. That's only happened twice, and one of them was last Sunday in Raheem Mostert and DeVon Achane. So really impressive there. And for that reason, I think it's going to be the offense that shows out on the road, be the identity of this team, make that Buffalo Bills defense, which is really tough, make them crumble with the vast majority of options that they have, and just really pick apart that Buffalo Bills defense through the air, on the ground, and everything in between. So I love the Dolphins offense to make the big plays when the game is on the line. We got a super chat, a first-time super chatter from Joseph B. I really appreciate that. You never forget your first super chat. You never forget your first. So September 27th is going to come around next year, and you're going to say, I remember I submitted my first super chat to Dolphins today. The first of many, Joseph, so we appreciate that. All right, this one's from, let's see, Symbiotic 2. Okay, here we go. Dolphins, how concerned about the O-line depth are you? Fair question, given the injury status of Connor Williams and Teron Armstead missed a couple of games at the beginning portion of the season. So when you start talking about depth at a position group like the offensive line, it's fair to raise some questions and some concerns. However, Mike McDaniel spoke highly of Liam Eichenberg stepping in for Connor Williams in the second half of that game, and that's a guy that Dolphins fans had their doubts about. So when you consider the replacements that the Dolphins offensive line have at their respective positions, although they're not necessarily guys that have proven it in the past, they're proving it this year. So the concern, it's always in the back of your mind because the Dolphins offensive line is relatively thin, but I don't think it's anything you need to sound the alarms with yet. And for that matter, it's the National Football League. Injuries are going to happen. Guys got to step in and be capable of having that next man up mentality, which the Dolphins offensive line has done thus far this season. G the Go asks, should the Dolphins be the favorites in the AFC? What do you think? Absolutely, they should be the favorites. They're the only undefeated team in the AFC, and through a 3-game sample size, they've done as much as they can to prove that they're the team to beat in the AFC. Now, again, this Sunday will be a huge test, divisional matchup on the road against Buffalo. So, yeah, there's going to be more to prove, but up to this point, you can't do anything more than what the Dolphins have done in a 3-game span to prove they are the best team in the AFC East. I've got them as the number 2 team in my power rankings, as do we all at Chat Sports. So We got the Niners as the number one team in the NFC and the Dolphins as the number one team in the AFC. But what say you? Are the Dolphins, in your mind, the favorites in the AFC? Type Y for yes or N for no. Let me know in the comments. It's our pinned comment of the day. So if YouTube hits you with the ad break, just type in the comments Y for yes, N for no if you believe the Dolphins are the team to beat in the AFC. Great question here from Sherry May. I wouldn't expect anything less. She is one of the real ones. Using the hashtag Dolphins, McDermott's D-sacked the Commies 9 times. Do you think we can keep Tua clean and upright? This is certainly, without a doubt, the biggest test of the season so far for the Miami Dolphins. But let's not forget Sunday Night Football. That's a good defensive line by the Patriots with Matthew Judon and company. And the Dolphins kept Tua Tagovailoa upright and dry as well on Sunday night. And they proved that they were capable of doing that. Now, of course, the Broncos defense is significantly worse than the Bills defense. But with this offensive line, they've proven that they've been up to the task in the first 3 weeks and go all the way back to week 1. I mean, the Chargers have some capable pass rushers, obviously, with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, and they did a great job of keeping Tua upright in that game as well. So I think it's a prove-it game. Earlier this week, I said this is the type of game you circle on the schedule and say this is when we prove who we are to the rest of the National Football League. So with great opportunity, the Dolphins will plunge into Buffalo and take on a really good Buffalo Bills defense, specifically defensive line and specifically front seven, and I think they'll be up to the task. Dolphins Today is presented by PrizePicks.com. We are so pumped to have them on board for a number of different reasons. And for me personally, I use PrizePicks all the time. There's a lot of things I love about PrizePicks. Most notably, it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. What's also really nice, especially for someone like me, not the most technologically savvy, the app is incredibly easy to use, and ultimately it's easy to win big. How easy? I'm so glad you asked. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and then you place your entry. It's that simple. So forget the complicated spreadsheets. It never really worked anyways. Quit trying to beat the Sharks. What's awesome about PrizePicks, guys, I'm telling you, it's just you versus the projections. That's it. You versus the projected stats. And look, I use PrizePicks all the time. I've already got my picks ready for Sunday. These guys haven't failed me yet through 3 weeks. They've been the best wide receiver and best quarterback duo in the National Football League. So with Tyreek Hill, I'm picking more on his projected receiving yards, more than 94.5 yards receiving. And for Tua Tagovailoa, I'm picking more on his projected pass yards, more than 276.5 yards passing for Tua. And it's that easy. Look, you just make your picks against the projected stats and go from there. So don't waste any more time. Set up your PrizePicks account today. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. And don't worry, that link will be in the comments and the description of this video. But one more time, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to 100 buckaroos. All right, Schnazzy, great question here. Big fan of this question. How is Jalen Ramsey doing? Is there a timetable on when he's going to return? Because the Dolphins defense has been so good in the first 3 weeks, it's easy to forget that we've got some weapons waiting in the wings as soon as they get healthy, and Jalen Ramsey is one of those guys. There hasn't been any type of recent update, so about a week or two ago, he still said he's targeting that mid to late December return, so near the end of the regular season. But you got to give it up to Kader Kohou, who has filled in admirably and been one of the best and top-rated corners in the National Football League. Xavier Howard's been really good as well. He had that interception on Sunday night and in a really close game. So Xavier Howard's been one of the top graded corners according to Pro Football Focus. And Kader Kohou, man, he's made some plays, yes, in the passing game as a cornerback, but also coming up in blitzing. He had the big sack in week number 2 as well. So you got to give a shout out to Kader Kohou and Xavier Howard. They've played really well. And when you bring in Jalen Ramsey, that'll be one more addition to Vic Fangio's defense that I think obviously will be a welcomed addition. But no exact update on the timetable of his return. But like everything else, as soon as we know, we will keep you posted on Dolphins Today with all the latest breaking news and injury updates. All right, this one from Carter Reimer. Dolphins, who could we trade for that's not a running back or a tight end? It's a good question. And, I don't know if there's any names that really come to mind, especially, I don't want this to be any kind of cop-out, but they got a good thing going. And unless something happens as far as the injury ways, where a specific position might need something, there's not really anything that jumps out to me of additions that you'd want to bring in. I mean, the running back room is what's been talked about the most, but Raheem Mostert and DeVon Achane and even Devon Achane, I mean, those guys have played as well as you can. The Dolphins have such a good thing going right now. The chemistry is there, so I don't necessarily know if there's any names out there right now that you want to necessarily bring in to mess with that team chemistry. All right, Miami Dolphin 22. Milano has been a Tua killer in recent years. How do we best contain him? Scheme. It's all about the scheme, and the Miami Dolphins have been one of the best teams on the offensive end in out-scheming their opponents. There's a lot of different metrics that you can use to point to this. One of them, the pre-snap motion and shifting. How about this stat was mentioned on the broadcast on Sunday, but over 77% of the time in Mike McDaniel and Frank Smith's scheme, there's some sort of pre-snap motion and shifting. Tua's getting the ball out quick. That's a part of it as well. And that offensive scheme has been able to really take advantage of whatever defense is in front of them and find the soft spots in the zone. If it's man coverage, you got a lot of man beaters there, obviously with Tyreek Hill and his ability in the passing game. And you'd like to think you're going to get Jaylen Waddle back here as well for Sunday's game. So I think the Dolphins have the talent to be able to really dissect any defense that's in front of them. And then as far as containing Milano, yes, he's been a beast. He was against Washington as well. But, there's not one player you can let beat you. So if it takes a game plan in order to stop him, that's something that Mike McDaniel and Frank Smith will certainly be able to come up with. This one's from the Scots. Raheem Mostert is the best running back in the league. The only thing stopping him is injury. Yeah, he has been really good. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He has been exceptional. And the good thing, too, I think, when the Dolphins have been able to utilize two different running backs on the field at the same time, it's been really impressive. Look what they did with DeVon Achane and Raheem Mostert in that game against the Broncos, where they're on the field at the same time often. And a lot of that, too, is the blocking up front. I mean, there were several different toss sweeps to Raheem Mostert on Sunday. I went back and rewatched that game last night, and nobody's making contact with him until 7-8 yards down the field. And then even on the Sunday night football game against the Patriots, that 43-yard run he had went untouched. So, yes, Raheem Mostert has been impressive. He's been incredible. Certainly one of the best running backs in the National Football League through 3 weeks of play. So, rank Raheem Mostert among NFL running backs. Let me know in the comments. Right now, I think you could make the case that number one, certainly in the top 5. He leads all running backs in rushing touchdowns with 6 rushing touchdowns. He also has been involved in the passing game as well, which has been great to see, and goes back to what I've been saying over and over and over again, that this Dolphins offense is just a wealth of weapons, 1 through 11. All right, Chris Latimer. After a fantastic win last week, how do the Dolphins keep grounded going into a tough away game against the Bills? So glad you asked. I mentioned this on my Dolphins-Bills preview that's available on Dolphins Today, that it's easy in the midst of a season to get really high, especially after 3 momentous wins, but you got to stay disciplined. You got to keep playing Miami Dolphins football. And there's going to be times in Sunday's game against the Bills where maybe things don't go right. Maybe there's some adversity to overcome, but stay grounded, stay disciplined, stick to the game plan, and continue to put your best foot forward by playing Miami Dolphins football. And you know what? I'm not going to say the Dolphins haven't been tested yet, because that week 1 opening game against the Chargers was obviously really close, back and forth, and it took a late touchdown for the Dolphins to earn the win. But I think Sunday represents the biggest test for the Dolphins so far this season. And I know they're up to that test. They're up to the challenge, and will be able to stay grounded by continuing to play Dolphins football. We got a lot of them coming in. We appreciate that. Kelly Hutchinson, why not get rid of Wilson? He is not doing anything. I'm assuming you mean Jeff Wilson Jr. He's on the IR. Oh, or Cedric Wilson. Yes, Cedric Wilson in the wide receiver room, either one. So the thing with Cedric Wilson is you don't want to take away any depth. And he showed in week 1 that he can be a viable part of this offense. He hasn't put up ridiculous numbers by any means, but I don't think it's the case just because 2 games went by where he didn't do much that you just get rid of him per se, because I think he still has a place on this team. And you know what? The guy makes some plays in special teams as well. So Cedric Wilson's a guy that contributes to the Dolphins team more than just what meets the stat line. So I'm not quite ready to just get rid of Cedric Wilson. All right. Want to remind you to stay locked into the latest and greatest Dolphins content anywhere. Subscribe to Dolphins Today. Wall-to-wall coverage, fun watch parties, giveaways on our watch parties. We got it all going on Dolphins Today. We don't want you to miss a part of it. So hit that subscribe button, youtube.com/Dolphins Today. And thanks for tuning in to our mailbag session here on Dolphins Today.